Sarah worked double shifts at a small diner, barely making enough to cover her rent and basic needs. Every day, she watched an elderly homeless man sit outside in the cold, his weathered face showing years of hardship. Despite having only $80 in tips saved for her own Thanksgiving dinner, Sarah decided to use that money to buy him a warm holiday meal. She knew this meant having nothing left for herself, but seeing his hunger pained her more than her own empty stomach. 3 days later, as Sarah serves her regular customers, a well-dressed man walked in with a letter that would turn her simple act of kindness into something that touched millions of hearts worldwide. Hi everyone, welcome to Inspiration Story. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. Sarah worked as a waitress at Ruby's Diner in downtown Chicago. Her small apartment rent took most of her paycheck, leaving her with barely enough for basic needs. Maybe these extra shifts will help me save for winter, she said to herself. Every morning at 7 a.m., Sarah noticed an elderly homeless man sitting on the bench across from the diner. "I'm James," he had told her one morning. His gray hair and kind eyes reminded her of her late grandfather. She often saw him searching through trash bins for food, which broke her heart. "Just ignore him, Sarah," the other waitresses said. "He's driving customers away," some customers complained. But Sarah could not look away. "A few dollars saved each day, and I'll have a nice Thanksgiving dinner," she thought. During her morning shifts, Sarah would sneak James a cup of hot coffee when no one was looking. "Thank you, dear," he would say with a gentle smile. "Lost my home after getting sick. Couldn't keep up with the medical bills," he had explained. $80 saved, Sarah counted her tips. She planned to buy a small turkey and some sides. The night before Thanksgiving, the temperature dropped below freezing. Through the diner window, she saw James huddled on his bench, trying to stay warm. "Grandpa always said helping others matters more than helping yourself," she whispered, remembering his words. Without hesitation, she took her saved tip money and went to the grocery store after her shift. "That will be $78, the cashier said. Sarah's hands shook as she handed over her savings. "Bread for dinner tomorrow it is," she thought to herself. "Here's something warm for Thanksgiving, James," Sarah said, approaching his bench. His eyes lit up at the sight of the hot food. "God bless you," he whispered, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks as she wrapped the blanket around his shoulders. She noticed a small silver chain around his neck but thought nothing of it at the time. That night, Sarah went home to her cold apartment. Her stomach growled, but her heart felt warm. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness was about to change not just her life but the lives of many others in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, Sarah walked to work in the cold November wind. She noticed James wasn't at his usual spot. The bench sat empty, covered in frost. "I hope James is okay," she whispered, worrying through her morning shift. Around noon, a tall man in an expensive suit walked into the diner. "Just coffee, please," he said, sitting in Sarah's section. He watched her serve other tables, making notes in his small notebook. During her break, Sarah overheard other waitresses talking. "Did you see that story on the news?" one said. "A wealthy businessman disappeared 3 months ago, and his family's still searching for him." The man in the suit came back the next day, and the next. "Coffee again, please," was all he would say. On the third day, he spoke up. "Sarah, would you please sit down? I'm Michael Thompson, private investigator. I've been watching your interactions with James. Am I in trouble for the free coffee?" Sarah asked nervously. "No, not at all," Michael smiled, pulling out a photograph. "Do you recognize this man?" Sarah's hands began to shake as she looked at the younger James in a business suit. James Harrison was CEO of Harrison Technologies, Michael explained. After his wife died, he couldn't cope. He donated his money to charity and disappeared. His daughter hired me to find him. Sarah couldn't believe it. The silver chain around his neck? His wedding ring, Michael nodded. He keeps it close to remember his wife. Where is James now? Sarah asked. He left early Thanksgiving morning for his daughter's house, Michael said. Before leaving, he told me, find the waitress who showed me kindness when no one else would. I'm just happy he's safe and warm with his family, Sarah said, tears forming in her eyes. Sarah went back to work, unaware that her life was about to change. The next morning would bring a surprise that would leave everyone in the diner speechless. The following morning, Sarah arrived early for her shift. The diner buzzed with unusual activity. 2 TV news vans were parked outside. "Sarah, there are people here to see you," her manager said, looking stunned. In the largest booth sat James, now clean-shaven and wearing an elegant suit. Next to him was a young woman who shared his kind eyes. "Hello, Sarah," James said, standing up. "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Emma." "We've been looking for my father for months," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Your kindness brought him back to us." James spoke softly. "That Thanksgiving meal reminded me of my late wife. She always said a warm meal could heal a broken soul. Your compassion woke me up from a long, dark dream." More people entered the diner. Michael Thompson appeared with documents in hand. "Sarah, James has something to tell you." "I've established a foundation in your name," James announced. "The Sarah Wilson Foundation for Homeless Care. We're starting with $5 million. Sarah's legs grew weak. A chair appeared behind her just in time. I don't understand." "That's not all," Emma added. "Dad bought this diner. He's making you the manager, with a full ownership stake." Sarah's co-workers gathered around, tears in their eyes. The local news crews filmed as James explained his plans to turn the diner into a place where homeless people could get free meals. "But why?" Sarah asked, still processing everything. "Because you saw me as a human being, not just a homeless man," James replied. "You gave your last dollars to help me, expecting nothing in return." The diner erupted in applause. Customers wiped tears from their faces. Outside, more news vans arrived as the story spread. "There's one more thing," James said, reaching into his pocket. "My wife's favorite saying is engraved on this." He handed Sarah a small silver bracelet. Sarah read the words through tears, "Kindness given freely returns tenfold." "Sarah, come look at this," Emma called, holding up her phone. "Your story is everywhere on social media. Local newspapers want interviews," Michael said. "Would you be comfortable speaking to them?" "I never thought helping someone would create such attention," Sarah replied. The diner had transformed within days. Regular customers watched as workers installed a new sign reading, "Everyone deserves a warm meal." "How many people did we serve today?" James asked, now dressed in his business suit but sitting at his old bench. 73, Sarah smiled. "And look at this." She showed him a stack of receipts. "Customers keep paying extra, saying, 'Use this for someone who needs it.'" An elderly woman approached their table. "Are you Sarah?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "My son lived on these streets for years." "Please, sit down," Sarah offered. "Someone showed him kindness, just like you did for James," the woman continued. "Now my son has a job, a home. Here's $500. Help more people, please." The kitchen staff worked steadily, preparing meals. "We need more cooking space," Sarah told James. "More people come every day." "Already planned," James nodded. "Construction starts next week." But that's not all. Emma joined them, carrying blueprints. "We're opening 3 more locations," she announced. "Sarah, we want you to oversee all of them." A young man stumbled in, his clothes ragged. I haven't eaten in 2 days," he said quietly. "Take any seat you'd like," Sarah smiled warmly. "What can I get you?" "I don't have money," he whispered, looking down. "You don't need any," Sarah replied. "That's not how we work here anymore." James watched from his bench as Sarah served the man. "Remember when you used to sneak me coffee?" he asked. "Look what that small act of kindness created." "A single act of compassion can start a chain reaction," Sarah said, touching her silver bracelet. "I understand that now more than ever." 3 months later, Sarah stood in the renovated diner's kitchen. "We served over 200 people today," she told her staff. Each one has a story, just like James did. Sarah, you need to see this, Emma rushed in, holding a letter. The city council voted. They're giving us 6 more locations. And that's not all, James added, walking in with Michael. Remember the foundation money? It's grown to 15 million from donations. A reporter asked Sarah for an update. How has life changed since that Thanksgiving night? I still work the same hours, Sarah smiled. Just differently now. Instead of worrying about tips, I worry about having enough seats for everyone. A small girl tugged at Sarah's sleeve. My mom says you helped my daddy, she said. He has a job now. He's not sleeping in the park anymore. Your daddy helped himself, Sarah knelt down. We just gave him a warm meal and a chance. James watched from his regular spot. Sarah turned this place into what I always wanted but couldn't do alone, he told visitors. Every morning, Sarah placed a fresh coffee cup on the counter. For anyone who needs warming up, the sign read. The diner's wall now displayed hundreds of thank you notes. You gave me hope, one read. Your kindness saved my life, said another. Sarah often touched her silver bracelet, remembering that cold Thanksgiving night. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes, she told new volunteers. Ready to close up? Emma asked one evening. Just one more cup of coffee, Sarah smiled, serving a shivering woman who had just walked in. Everyone deserves a warm welcome. Love this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Mystic Tales for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments. Here is a continuation of the story, inspired by the original. Months turned into years, and the impact of Sarah's Diner continued to grow. With 6 locations now operational across the city, the Sarah Wilson Foundation for Homeless Care became a symbol of hope and community. Each diner was designed not just to serve meals but to provide services like job training, mental health support, and temporary housing assistance. One cold December morning, Sarah was overseeing the grand opening of the 7th diner. It was located in a part of the city notorious for its high homelessness rate. The line outside stretched around the block as people waited for their first meal at the new establishment. As Sarah greeted the crowd, she noticed a young woman standing at the back with a little boy, both shivering in thin jackets. Come inside, Sarah called out to them, offering a warm smile. The young woman hesitated, clutching the boy's hand tightly. It's okay. You're welcome here, Sarah reassured her. Once inside, the woman broke down in tears. I didn't know where else to go, she admitted. We've been living in our car for weeks. I lost my job, and I've been trying to find work. Sarah knelt beside her. You're not alone anymore. Let us help. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and her team worked tirelessly to support the woman. With the foundation's resources, they found her temporary housing, childcare for her son, and even a part-time job at one of the diners. Her story became one of many successes that fueled Sarah's mission. One evening, Sarah returned to the original diner, now a bustling hub of activity. James was sitting at his old bench, sipping coffee, and greeting regulars as if no time had passed. Emma, his daughter, had become heavily involved in running the foundation and was now working on expanding its reach nationwide. Dad, what are you doing here? Emma asked, laughing as she placed a hand on his shoulder. I like to remember where it all began, James said, smiling. This place gave me my life back. I'm proud of what we've all built together. Sarah joined them, holding a fresh pot of coffee. It's amazing to see how far we've come, she said, pouring James another cup. But there's still so much to do. Emma nodded. That's why I've been working on something. I want to partner with local governments to open permanent housing centers. Imagine combining our diners with shelters where people can stay until they get back on their feet. James looked at his daughter with pride. That's an incredible idea. Your mom would be so proud of you. The 3 of them sat together, discussing plans late into the evening. As the last customers left, Sarah walked to the diner's wall of thank you notes, now filled to the brim with stories of gratitude and hope. She touched the silver bracelet on her wrist and whispered to herself, kindness given freely truly does return tenfold. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the original diner early, as she always did. To her surprise, there was a small package waiting for her at the front door. Inside was a handwritten letter and an old photograph of a young James with his wife and daughter. The letter read, "Dear Sarah, I can never thank you enough for what you did for me. Your kindness saved my life and gave me a reason to hope again. My wife always believed that one act of compassion could change the world. You proved her right. I wanted you to have this photo as a reminder of the family you've helped reunite and the countless lives you've touched. With endless gratitude. James." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she placed the photo on the wall next to the thank you notes. It was a reminder of why she started this journey and why she would never stop. The Sarah Wilson Foundation continued to grow, spreading its mission of compassion far beyond the city. And through it all, Sarah remained at the heart of the movement, proving that a single act of kindness could indeed change the world. As the Sarah Wilson Foundation expanded across the country, the impact of its mission became more profound. Each new diner and shelter opened its doors to thousands of people who had been living without hope. The Foundation's programs not only offered meals but also connected people to job opportunities, mental health counseling, and long-term housing. Sarah's story became a beacon of light for communities everywhere. One snowy evening, Sarah found herself in Washington, D.C., where she had been invited to speak at a national conference on homelessness. Standing backstage, she felt a mix of nervousness and pride. She had never imagined her simple act of kindness years ago would bring her to such a stage. As she walked out to the podium, the audience of policymakers, social workers, and advocates erupted in applause. Sarah took a deep breath, looking out at the faces before her. "I'm not a politician or a business tycoon," she began. "I'm just a waitress who decided one night that kindness was more important than saving for a turkey dinner. But that decision taught me something powerful. When we choose to see each other as human beings, not problems, we can create miracles." The room fell silent as Sarah shared her journey, recounting the story of James and the ripple effect his gratitude had created. She spoke about the thousands of lives the foundation had touched, the families reunited, and the communities strengthened by compassion. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted for several minutes. As Sarah stepped down, several attendees approached her, eager to partner with the foundation. One of them was a senator who wanted to introduce legislation to allocate more federal funding for homelessness prevention programs. Later that evening, Sarah returned to her hotel room, exhausted but fulfilled. She opened her laptop to find an inbox flooded with messages from people inspired by her speech. Among them was a message from a man named Robert, who shared how the foundation's support had helped him turn his life around. He had gone from living on the streets to owning a small business, and he credited Sarah's story for giving him the courage to start over. "You've changed my life," the message read. "And I want to pay it forward." Back in Chicago, James continued to visit the original diner regularly. Now in his late 70s, he had become a mentor to many of the foundation's beneficiaries. He would sit at his favorite bench with a notebook, listening to their stories and offering advice. His daughter, Emma, often joined him, working on plans to expand the foundation globally. One afternoon, as Sarah walked into the diner, she found James sitting with a young boy. The boy, no older than 10, was holding a plate of pancakes and talking animatedly about his dream of becoming a chef. James listened intently, nodding and smiling. "Sarah, meet Kevin," James said, waving her over. "He's got big plans for the future." Kevin grinned. "I want to open a restaurant someday, just like this one. A place where everyone can eat, even if they don't have money." Sarah's heart swelled. "That's a wonderful dream, Kevin. And I have no doubt you'll make it happen." Kevin's mother, who had been watching from another table, approached them. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You've given my son a chance to dream again. That's something I thought we'd lost." As the years went on, the foundation's reach extended to other countries. Emma led efforts to open diners and shelters in Europe and Asia, while Sarah focused on mentoring the next generation of leaders. The foundation launched scholarship programs for young people who wanted to give back to their communities, ensuring that the legacy of kindness would continue for decades to come. One day, while visiting a new diner in Los Angeles, Sarah received a call from Michael Thompson, the private investigator who had first connected her to James. Now retired, Michael had spent his free time volunteering with the foundation. "I've got some news for you," Michael said. The city council in Chicago is renaming a street in honor of the foundation. They want to call it Wilson Way. Sarah was speechless. I don't know what to say." "You deserve it," Michael replied. "Your story has inspired millions, Sarah. This is just one way the city wants to thank you." On the day of the dedication ceremony, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate. As the new street sign was unveiled, Sarah stood with James and Emma by her side. The sign read,